Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It's Monday, April 27, 2015. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn, aka Rath, with this morning's DFS Minute here on rotocurve.com. I want to welcome everybody back from the weekend. And you might notice I look a little bit different. Yeah, I had to shave. I actually have a meeting this week. Can't walk in with a goatee in this particular meeting, so had to shave. But hopefully, I can grow it back after this week. Anyway, just a side note there. I know I'll probably get a lot of ribbing about it. Over the weekend, just briefly, tough spot for guys that had Wainwright and Shelby Miller, especially Wainwright, obviously with the Achilles injury. He only went 4 innings. He got hurt hitting. Killer injury for the Cardinals. And if there's one team that might be able to overcome it, it's them. They do have a guy like Lance Lynn to be able to kind of step up. And hopefully they have some guys in the minor leagues that they can bring in as 4th and 5th starters. But tough blow for the Cardinals, losing Wainwright, one of the most consistent pitchers in daily fantasy baseball that you want to use. And it was a tough night he had a high ownership rate. So if you had Wainwright, especially on one pitcher site like FanDuel, it was tough, which I did. And also Shelby Miller getting pulled after 70 pitches was something you definitely wouldn't have expected. So even in spite of the Wainwright-Miller situation, actually was really close in a couple of qualifiers on Saturday night, but then at the end, my lineup just couldn't hold up. But I had a good run of it there for a little bit, so that was exciting. But we'll get back here today on Monday. Couple things I noticed. FanDuel is running another Floyd Mayweather experience fight contest for $2 tonight, so definitely jump in on that. It's worth $2. If you happen to get lucky and win, you get an event of a lifetime and a fully paid, all expenses paid trip. So I think FanDuel's onto something with this, and I think that we're going to see more of this. Obviously, DraftKings been doing it with some of the things in the UFC and the Kentucky Derby and some of the poker events and things like that. They've done some other football. But I think there's going to be a lot more of this kind of stuff coming for big events. They also have done something with WWE as well. So I'm really looking forward to those contests, because hopefully what you're hoping for is they bring in the casual fantasy player and the sports fans in order for help the industry grow. So that's really what we're hoping for with that stuff. Now with the slate tonight, the way that it works, we got a couple of games at 6:10. So Kluber's out of the mix unless you do an all, and I definitely would suggest that you do that over on DraftKings. If you want to use Kluber, and then you can put all the rest of your guys for late swap, put all your guys after 7 o'clock. So you can get Kluber in there. Tread lightly on Kluber, though, even though he's at home. We saw what the Royals did to Sale last week. The Royals are one of the best offensive teams in baseball right now. They just don't strike out. Not to say Kluber can't get it done, but I feel much more comfortable using Kluber on a 2-pitcher site than I would on a 1-pitcher site tonight. The slate's pretty barren as far as top pitchers go. It seems like we've been saying it a lot lately, is that there's a lot of mediocre pitching out there. And so that's just something where we have to adjust our strategy when we have that. We got to go top shelf, pay up for the guys that we feel great about, and then look for value in those higher scoring games that we feel are going to have some bad pitching and a lot of runs. We'll talk about that and how to get into that a little bit. So on DraftKings, what I'm looking for is definitely check out the qualifiers today. You've got a $1 million home run going tomorrow at a $300 ticket. Okay, so it's not going to be a ton of buy-ins on this, and the overlay looks like it could be pretty big. So I would definitely fire some entries into the $1 million home run qualifiers tonight. I don't think it's worth a shot. Take a shot. If you happen to get a ticket, you're not going against 50,000 people. I think the field here is probably around 3,500, 3,600, and you could really have a really nice payoff at that. It's not a large field like some of the other contests that they have. So I think it's worth trying to fire away, and they do have a lot of satellites going tonight. I wouldn't go beyond your regular bankroll, but if you want to fire in, something, I think they have maybe some 27s or 33s out there that you can definitely jump into. As far as the fantasy baseball world champions go, I do like the $1,000 entry with the small field of 70. What I don't like is I'm really hoping that's not all they run, because these things are filling fast, and it's not really giving the whole entire player pool a chance. They're not running that many satellites. Now, they run everything under the qualifier tab on DraftKings, but just these are satellites to get into the qualifiers that then move on to the Fantasy Baseball World Championship. They are running some $3 ones, with the field is about 380, and they are running some other ones. But what I'm really hoping for is that they don't run these. What's getting frustrating is I'm seeing it's only a field of 70, and you're already having it stuffed with multiple entry. And I'm not blaming players one bit. I don't want anybody to take offense to any of it. I'm not chastising players at all. I'm really kind of just asking, whether it's FanDuel or DraftKings, because they both have massive multi-entry issues with qualifiers, is let's try to tighten up on the multiple entry numbers that you're allowing, and let's try to run some more satellites that would give everybody an opportunity to get in. Because let's face it, the story is not necessarily if we want a pro, so to speak, winning these. The story is if the average Joe can win $1 million, and that's what sells and that's what grows the market. So that would only be my plea. I would not call that a Rath, as I mentioned Friday on Twitter. I was going to hit up a Rath today, but I decided not to. I got more of an olive branch, so to speak, to the sites to just say, maybe let's tighten up on these multiple entries. I mean, I'm looking at some of these on FanDuel, and the guys popping 20 entries into a 200-man contest. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I don't really understand the reasoning behind it. There's no reason. And they don't run satellites over on FanDuel very much to get into the qualifiers. So those qualifiers, unfortunately, are strictly geared towards people with high bankrolls. And it's really disappointing to see that. I really hope that FanDuel will revisit these qualifiers as they move forward, and hopefully start giving the smaller stakes players a chance to get into some of these tournaments, because that's really where the story's made. Regarding DraftKings tonight, because you have some later games, again, I talked about qualifiers. I think this is an opportunity where you have some late games, especially Price is in that middle tier around 8 o'clock game, and you definitely want to try to roll with him. I don't like playing small slates if the pitching is bad, but if you have at least one or two guys, you have Shields and McHugh late, and you've got Price. I think if you've got some options, then it makes where you can put a viable team out there. And again, look at these satellites and qualifiers in these what they call turbo or late contests, because a lot of times there's only a couple guys that are firing entries into every single contest. Somebody like a Max Dellauri, or that's one guy that you see in almost every one of these contests. Is it's not stuffed with pros and sharks for the most part, because a lot of times they just won't want to play them because of the short slate, and it's not optimal. So that might be an opportunity for you as a beginner player or intermediate player to take advantage and get some of these tickets. Sometimes there's overlay, and sometimes the competition in the fields are weak. So a lot of times I will fire some cheap satellites out there. They even have 25-cent satellites out there if you just want to have some fun and try to get a ticket. 25 cents, $3. Sometimes they run them at 10 or 11 or 12, but definitely an opportunity to, the way I look at it is, if you're going to fire a $3 entry to a moonshot that's got 60,000 entries or whatever the number happens to be, you're better off you might as well just throw the $3 into a Fantasy Baseball World Championship satellite, because you're going against 383, and if you happen to hit and win, now all of a sudden you put yourself in a position to have a really big score. So that's just my take on it. My advice: don't play those massive, giant GP tournaments at $3. I don't think there's any value in that. Play the 50-50s, play the double ups, play the leagues, play the smaller tournaments. 100, 200 people. But the 60,000, just the return on your money is just not there. But you might as well just throw a satellite and win that way. Like I said, 2 games at 610, so that plays a little bit tricky, especially with the Kluber situation. But I told you how to approach that. Talked about. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is I'd really, going back to the DraftKings and the qualifier for Fantasy Baseball World Championships, what I'd really like to see, I like the idea of the smaller field. It's just that when you limit it to 70, you really shut a lot of people out. So if they could maybe run them at, say, 700 entries at 109 instead of 70 at 1,000, I think that would be nice. It would definitely give a lot more guys an opportunity. Try to cut down on the multiple entry. Don't let 20, 30 entries into a 700-man field. Limit it to 5 or 10. It's going to fill. And then you're going to spread the equity around of the entries. Guys are still going to be playing all of the contests, but it's really frustrating to see when you have these fields and it's not really giving an opportunity to everybody to get in. So that's just my take on it. If you want to call it a rash rant, that's fine, but I don't think it's really more of a rant. I think it's more of a plea that I just think I'd like to see the qualifiers become a little bit more healthier and open for all players. Because if you run it at 109, you can run satellites all day long at 25 cents, $1, $2, $3, $5. And that gives a small guy an opportunity to get in and play for a big prize and have a lot of excitement. So that's really what we're gearing towards, and that's really my plea. There's a couple of games tonight where lines have not officially been posted. There is one sportsbook that has posted them, but in some of the major ones, it's not there. So real quick is the Giants and the Dodgers game, Brett Anderson, Tim Lincecum. I do have an early line. It looks like Anderson would be minus 110 with a total of 7. I think Anderson is interesting in this spot at home. I'm not going to go crazy with him, but in a tournament as a second pitcher, if he allows me to get a guy like Price and Kluber, I think he might be an interesting option. The other game is Chase Anderson against Matzik. We have Arizona Cardinals and the Colorado Rockies in Arizona. The total looks like it's going to be 9, and Anderson's a 145 favorite here. That's a little high for my taking, but the 9 I think is justified. I do like Matzik, but I don't like him in this spot. So I think you're looking at some Diamondbacks right-handed beef, Goldschmidt, Trumbo, and maybe even Tomas as plays in a tournament. Not about as far as heads-ups and 50-50s, I think I'd probably lean more towards Goldschmidt. Trumbo and Tomas are more guys for tournaments because they're boom or bust. They're either going to go home runs or they're going to go 0 for 4 and they get a lot of strikeouts. So I think that Goldschmidt probably is going to be one of those guys you're going to want to lock in today at the top hitting. David Price is the top guy tonight in the pitching realm. Now he did get lit up last time against the Yankees, but I think this is a different spot. We got the Minnesota Twins, who are very weak offense at this point, and and then on the other side, I think that the Detroit is going to be able to put up some runs. So I think you got to like David Price to bounce back tonight, and I would feel comfortable rolling him out there on FanDuel, on DraftKings, in my heads-ups and 50-50s. I think he's almost a must-play tonight. Now, Price is what we call minus 165. I'm going to break down Vegas a little bit here. And I think it's something that Benny and Josh will probably touch on in more depth. They've touched on it a little bit on some of the curve shows, but I think I'd like to see more of a detailed breakdown and show you guys how to truly break down Vegas lines, because it's not just looking at the favorite and looking at the total. You've got to get a projected run total on both sides, and the money line and the run line and the total line anyway are what drives that. So I'll give you a brief example. David Price minus 165, run total is 7.5. How you do the math is you take 165, add 100, which is 265, okay? You divide 165 into 265. That gives you 62% or 0.62. That means David Price is a 62% favorite today. Then what you do is you take the total, which is 7.5. You multiply the 62% times 7.5. It gets you 4.67. That's the run total that you would project for Detroit today. If you want to round it to 4.7, that's fine. I usually just go 2 decimal spots because I'm kind of anal with statistics. So it's 4.67 for Detroit. And what you do is you take 7.5 minus 4.67. That gives you 2.83. That's the projected run total for the Twins. What you have remaining is what we call differential, and that's what I look at every day when I'm looking at who the top pitchers are. I'm looking at who has the biggest run differential, favorite to underdog. David Price is 1.84. Right now, he has the biggest, one of the biggest run differentials on the board today at 184. So Vegas is projecting him to win by almost 2 runs. It's one of the biggest on the day, and I wouldn't be shocked now. Now you got to understand the 7.5 total is being driven by the fact that they feel the Tigers are going to put up a lot of runs. We had this situation with Kluber against the Twins where the total came out at 7.5, and I said on the show that number's too low. It's pushed down because of Kluber. I think the same thing's happening here. The number's being pushed down because of Price. I think this total could go up, and it could go up to 8. I don't think it's going to go to 8.5. I don't think anything crazy like that might happen, but I think this number could go to 8, which makes Price an even bigger favorite with a bigger run differential. And so that would lock him in even more. So just be aware that this line could go. I think this line could go to 8 today. It wouldn't shock me at all. And that's a brief breakdown of how you can project run totals for Vegas. You can put this in an Excel spreadsheet. It's what I do. I already have the formulas pre-built. All I do is I type in the pitcher names, I type in the spreads. It automatically puts in the numbers. So it's all Excel, and it's basic Excel. It's nothing fancy. The other guy you want to look at is John Lackey. He's minus 146 at home. Now the total is 6.5 going against the Phillies and against Cole Hamels. Lackey is another guy that was roughed up last time out, but again, he gets a very weak offensive team in the Phillies today. Now his projected run total, as far as the Phillies are projected to have only 2.64 runs today, which is the fewest on the board. That's another reason why I'd like Lackey. I don't necessarily feel comfortable rolling Lackey out on a site like FanDuel, but I would absolutely use him as my second pitcher on a site like DraftKings or Fantasy Aces because I'm going to back him up with David Price. So if I can get Price and Lackey into my lineups on two-pitcher sites, that'd be a strategy that I'd be looking to do. The other game I would look at is the San Diego Padres and the Houston Astros. And you got James Shield against Colin McHugh. James Shield is a slight favorite, around 120 at home, so it's almost a coin toss. The total is only 6.5. So I think Shields and McHugh are in play here. A lot of guys may not be on McHugh because they're afraid of the Padres bats and that maybe Houston just won't score tonight. But I would not be afraid to use Colin McHugh tonight because he's just been a monster. And I think he's still, I talked about him last time, he's an underrated pitcher in baseball. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball over if you include this year and the second half of last year. The guy's numbers have been phenomenal, and he's a guy I think is ready to break through. I talked about the top 20 pitchers that you want to use on FanDuel on my article on RotoWire Friday, and I also gave you some guys who I think are ready to break through. I think Colin McHugh is at the top of the list, and another guy that showed over the weekend he's probably getting right there is Chris Archer. So definitely some guys you want to definitely consider in your cash game lineups, in your heads ups, in your 50-50s, is guys that maybe are still underpriced in the industry, haven't hit that $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 price yet, but don't be surprised if you see those guys in that price range in the near future. Some bats that you want to look at. We did talk about Arizona, and I think the Diamondbacks right-handed bats are definitely going to be in play tonight. Somebody to take a look at. The Orioles bats going against Noesi. The Orioles put up 18 runs yesterday, so salaries may be juiced a little bit, but I think that Baltimore would be in play. And then also the Yankees left-handed bats at home, always somebody you want to take a look at, going against Nate Carnes, who's really a bottom third-tier pitcher in the baseball. So the Yankees left-handed bats would be somebody that you could look at today. This is Rath signing off for the DFS Minute, the AM edition. We'll be back later on today with the PM edition once lineups come out, once we get some more information, and we'll tell you what way we think you should go in tonight's DFS action. Again, Rath signing off. And as we say here at RotoCurve every day, stay classy, DFS.